Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to the War on Gaza report. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we cover Israel's war on Gaza. It is important to note that it is not a war against Palestine in terms of it being Israel Hamas. This is not an evenly matched battle over land. It's not true. This is not a war against terror. That is not true. This is a war on Palestine. It's a war on the Palestinian people. And specifically since October 7th, it's been a war on the Gaza Strip. We've been covering it since day one. And now, sadly, we have reached day 328. What a devastating number. What a disturbing number, but a number that we're going to continue to unpack and cover until the war ends. We begin, as we always do, with the numbers. As of today, at least 40,476 people have been killed. 40,476 people killed, in addition to the 93,647 people who have been wounded in Israel's war on Gaza. This is, again, a devastating number. This is, again, an unthinkable number, but it's a number that we have to deal with. It's a number that we have to be honest about. It's a number that we have to reckon with if we are going to tell the truth about injustice and tell specifically the truth about the genocide in Gaza, the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. If we're going to talk about Israeli apartheid, if we're going to talk about a free Palestine, we have to teach the world what's going on. And that's why we do this every single night that we have an opportunity to do so. That number, 40,476, is a powerful number. It's a compelling number. It's an overwhelming number, but it's not an accurate number because that 40,476 is actually low. It's actually low for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't count the people under the rubble. More than 10,000 people are currently under the rubble. Their names and their identities have not been registered with the health ministry. And so when they say 40,476, they're not counting the people who we know who are under the rubble, but who technically have not been deemed dead. So what that means is you have families who haven't been able to name their children or claim their children. You have people who haven't been able to give decent burials. These are things that are provided to people under humanitarian law. These are things that are granted to every human being as a code of basic decency, but also as a matter of basic human rights, universal human rights. And so when we see the number, we should be outraged at the 40,000. We should know that number is a lot higher. And then when we look at the broader scale, reason number two, and the Lancet study talks about this, we're looking not just at the people who have been killed directly by war, which is what those numbers represent, but we also have to look at the people who have died because of the conditions of war. When someone starves to death, what does that mean in a moment where humanitarian aid has been blocked, where the humanitarian corridor has been shut down, where food shipments have been destroyed, where people are being gunned down? Against the backdrop of that, the numbers are even greater. So we have to understand what we're dealing with here. That is a high number, but it is not the whole story. It's also quite and Boaz Kim Music just made the point that I was just making. And the Lancet study talks about this. The number is probably not 40,000. It's much more likely that it's like 180,000. When we look at the whole story, we have to talk about that. Let's keep going though. We're not here for a long time, but we're gonna go as deep as we can. According to the Gaza Civil Defense Ministry or Force, Israeli tank fire prevented crews from reaching people buried after a home was destroyed in Khan Yunis, as Israeli bombardments continue across Gaza and attacks in south and central areas intensify. This is an important point. It's specifically because of what we just talked about. There are people who are under the rubble. I personally can't even look anymore without incredible distress. at the number of children, the number of Palestinian babies who have been killed. Even of that 40,000, we're looking at 15,000, 18,000 children dead. But the reason why I'm bringing it up at this moment is because when these homes are destroyed, when Israeli tanks come, or Israeli aerial assaults come, or Israeli soldiers with boots on the ground come, they go to places like Khan Yunis. They go to places like Rafah, both in the south. And they will, under the claim that there is a terrorist there, under the claim that a Hamas operative is there, they will blow up a house. And when they blow up that house, the house crumbles. More of the built environment of Gaza is destroyed. We're in the 80s in terms of what's left, or what's not left. 80%, more than 80% of the built environment destroyed. Houses, wells, hospitals, schools, etc. But we also see numerous people under the rubble. Those people who get buried under the house technically may not get counted by the ministry as dead, but they are dead. The homes are there. And so what you're seeing on the ground in Gaza right now is an attempt to get Israeli rescue forces to those people so that they don't suffocate under a house, so that they don't burn up in the smoldering fires that emerge after you tear down a house or a refugee camp or a hospital or a school. But tonight, according to Gaza Civil Defense, the Israeli tanks kept going. They kept firing. They kept shooting. And when the tanks are going, you got the tank, you got the soldier, you got the weaponry. What happens? People can't come in to save the children. So even the indisputably innocent, even the undeniably unarmed people can't be saved. This is a consequence. Another important update that we just found out, or recently found out, is that at least 20 people have been killed in the most recent Israeli strikes targeting Deir el-Balah, which is in central Gaza. If you don't know, Deir el-Balah is like here, Khan Yunis is here, Rafah is like here. They've been striking Deir el-Balah and they've been striking Khan Yunis considerably, and 20 people killed. Now, again, the numbers are so high and so consistently high that 20 people killed almost doesn't even hit the radar when we talk about Gaza. But 20 people is a lot of people. Anywhere you go, any country, any state, any city, 20 people dying in one sitting is unthinkable. And the fact that this happens every single night, again, you're talking about more than 40,000 deaths in less than 400 days. Like, what? You're talking about almost 300 to 400 people die a day in Gaza. These are the numbers. This is the disturbing reality that we're forced to deal with, and that we have to talk. We just have to. We just have to talk about it. In that way, we also have to talk about what's happening at UN headquarters. The UN has been forced to evacuate its humanitarian aid hub again. And I say again because this is the second time that we have had to see UN officials leave. The UN is attempting to help manage this. The UN is attempting to create humanitarian pockets, humanitarian corridors. But the problem is the evacuation orders are coming. And the reason the evacuation orders are coming is because there's so much violence. There's so much devastation. People have to do something. And so the UN officials, just like other international forces, are forced to leave, forced to temporarily stand down, forced to do something in the midst of a moment where humanitarian efforts in the Gaza Strip have to continually be halted because of the violence right now. A UN official said that we're doing what we can with what we have. We've been saying from the beginning, this is aid delivery by seizing every opportunity, seizing every crack that we can fill. So every situation is assessed day by day, hour by hour. These are impossibly difficult circumstances under which to work. We're talking about a moment, we're talking about a situation where UN workers are fighting for their lives. They're trying to hold this together, and they have to wait for fighting to stop. They have to wait for uh, Israeli tanks to leave. They have to wait for a moment where they won't literally die trying to deliver aid. And at the same time, they're building these institutions or trying to maintain institutions. I'm going to show you just an example really quickly of this UN school. This is the school. This is the school. This is the school. What you notice in this picture is, one, what you're directly looking at is a school, but behind the school, what you see hanging over every banister is every person's belongings, every t-shirt, every piece of underwear, every shoe. This is the condition of Gaza right now. This is it's indefensibly awful, is all I can tell you. It's indefensibly awful. But the UN, the United Nations, has to continually evacuate the Gaza Strip right now. The reason why this is relevant at the moment is for two reasons. One, the public health, well, both public health reasons, but the first one is more than 96%. I'll say that number again. 96% of women and infants, I'm talking about children from 6 months to 23 months. So I'm going to say this number one more time. I need you to really hear what I'm saying. If you look at all the women in Gaza, as well as all the babies from 6 months to 23 months, 96% of them, almost all of them, are not meeting their nutritional requirements. Also, more than 50,000 children in Gaza require treatment for acute malnutrition. So while Israel is giving mass evacuation orders, kicking people out, denying access to aid, and these humanitarian organizations can't provide the aid because they are being intimidated, killed, or just obstructed, what you end up with, what we're left with right now, is a humanitarian crisis. I'm not going to say of unprecedented proportions, because colonial powers and imperial powers all around the world do this all the time. I can't say, if I look in Sudan right now, I see something equally gross. When I look at, not Chad, but if I look in Congo, I see something equally gross. When I look at parts of Haiti, I see something equally gross. But this is happening with the world's attention fixed on it, and no one is batting an eye in certain circles. So this is all happening. But the reason why this is especially alarming right now, the reason why this is particularly devastating at this moment, is because the UN is being forced to evacuate. Humanitarian aid is being obstructed at a moment where it is in some ways needed the most. And the reason why I say that it's needed the most is because we are also on the precipice of a polio vaccination campaign. So polio is making a comeback in Gaza. This is a preventable and treatable, solvable problem. But it's not when you don't have doctors on the ground. It's not when you don't have humanitarian forces. It's not when you don't have safety to practice medicine, even the most basic preventative forms, and so, or prophylactic forms. And so what you end up with is a potential, not just for the humanitarian crisis that comes from people getting killed by troops and by bullets and by the government. It's also about the crisis of people dying of starvation, dehydration. It's also the crisis now of people dying with a spread of polio that should be preventable but may not be. One last thing before we go, I want to talk about at least 7 Palestinians have been reported killed in the West Bank. We've seen another military incursion, and there's a nonstop military incursion in the West Bank. But Jenin, by the way, if you haven't read the book Mornings in Jenin, read Mornings in Jenin by Susan Abu Hawa. But in the city of Jenin and in the city of Tulkarem, we see raids, and in those raids, these are large-scale military operations. This isn't like the night raids where you get 20 troops come in. This isn't even like the settler raids, which are awful. But now we're talking about hundreds of troops invading the West Bank, and people are dying. The reason I'm bringing that up is because as we talk about Gaza, I don't want that to come at the expense of the West Bank. I don't want that to come at the expense of East Jerusalem. We have to talk about all of it. We have to talk about it with integrity and consistency and dignity and criticality. And that means that, you know, what happens in the West Bank, what happens inside of Israel, what happens in East Jerusalem, and what happens in Gaza are interwoven, they're overlapping, they're co-determinant, and we have to address all of it simultaneously. Anyway, family, that is it for the War on Gaza report. I want to thank you all for watching. Make sure you support the channel, and make sure you support this War on Gaza report. If y'all like the War on Gaza report, hit the like button. If you like the War on Gaza report, hit the subscribe button. Also, feel free to hit that join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel and a monthly member of the channel. The subscription is free, but you can also become a monthly dues-paying member of the channel by hitting the join button. If you're on the desktop, click join. If you're on the phone or the laptop, and if it ain't there, go into the description and hit the join link. Also, family, feel free to drop a donation through the Cash App, through the PayPal, the Venmo, or the Zelle. Any of those platforms work. If you have $1 million to give, we'll take it. If you have $1 to give, we are just as grateful. I promise you we are. So give anything you want. But if everybody watching were to donate $10 right now, we would meet our financial goals for the month to pay our staff, to support our projects, to get out the work that we've made, and to develop new projects and build that new studio. So think about that. But all we definitely ask of you is to watch the content, share the content, and study the content. All right, family. Before we go, also, I want to shout out again James Harvey for the generous donation, Baby K for the donation. Jeffaholic says, "Shukran lil taqtiya al mustamira." Thank you for the continuous coverage. That's right. Mustamira is important. We have to do this every single day. We can't let up. And I've had days where I haven't been able to do it, but y'all been keeping me straight and honest on that. So I'm committing again to making sure we do this every single night, because Gaza deserves it. The world needs it. And it's just the right thing to do. And then we have here from Bring It to Green. Did you read today's Human Rights Watch report by Milena Ansari, Walid Khalili's account, torture of healthcare workers, men suspended from chains and diapers? I have not seen that, but I promise you this, Bring It to Green. I'm going to get that report right now, and we're going to cover it tomorrow on the show. Why? Because, again, it's the right thing to do. Thank you all for being so generous with your time, your talent, and your treasure. I will see you here tomorrow. Peace.